Today I have something really special to show you. This is a 1960 Morris Mini Minor. It's the original. It's how Alec Issigonis intended his little Mini to be. This is when it was still a car for the district nurse before it became a racing car and an icon. This is one of the very first of over 5 million Minis.
Everybody knows the story of the Mini, so I'll keep it relatively short. The Suez Crisis of 1956, caused by the nationalisation of the Suez Canal and Anthony Eden's government not liking that very much, led to fuel shortages in the UK. This led to a rise in sales of economy cars, such as the BMW Isetta, etc. Head of BMC, Leonard Lord, set about creating a proper small car, rather than something that looks a bit odd like the Isetta does. His brief was that the car should be no longer than 10 feet, with at least 6 feet of that being dedicated to passenger space. The job fell to the great Alec Issigonis in October 1956. Issigonis had a team of 8 men to help him make it a reality, and by July the following year, they had a prototype ready. Issigonis managed to get a big interior into a small car by mounting the engine transversely, with the gearbox underneath it in the sump to make more room inside, along with front-wheel drive. The reality of the times meant that the radiator had to be mounted at the side, still on the front of the engine, as developing a reliable electric fan setup in the late 50s was too much to ask. So we have a belt-driven fan on the side. There were a couple of problems with this, one being the obvious cooling issue, and the other was that all the sensitive electrical components were now right in the firing line of road dirt and rainwater. You can't win everything. The engine used was BMC's existing A-Series, here in 848cc form, producing 34 brake horsepower. That's a very small amount, but BMC actually made the engine smaller than the original prototypes because they were considered too fast for the tiny size of the car. 34 horsepower is still a tiny amount, but the car only weighs 580 kilos. 580! You could stack 3 Minis on top of each other and they would still weigh less than a modern Vauxhall Corsa. Another part of space saving came in the suspension. The Mini uses Alex Moulton's rubber cones rather than conventional springs. This makes the car handle incredibly well, but it is like a bouncy castle on wheels. Issigonis put the wheels at each corner of the car. This didn't only further increase the room inside, but it also made it handle like no other small car at the time. This is why the Mini ended up becoming a race car. It was such a good car to drive. From 1964 until 1970, Minis got Moulton's hydroelastic interconnected fluid suspension system, but that wasn't ready for the launch in 1959, but was for the Mini's big brothers, the 1100 and the 1800, and then later the Austin Maxi. The Mini's eventual successor in the mass market, the Austin Metro, used hydrogas, a later development of Moulton's original hydroelastic. Attached to that suspension are drum brakes and 10-inch wheels. Issigonis originally wanted 8-inch wheels, but had to settle on 10s for a number of different reasons. There are some features of the exterior of a really early Mini that may be a bit different to you. First of all are these sliding windows, and then you have these door handles, and of course external door hinges on a really early Mini. And of course on all Minis they have external seams all the way around. Saves a little bit of space, and it's also easier to manufacture, I believe. Now at the back of really early Minis, on the boot lid, you get a fold down number plate, so that if you're carrying stuff on the boot, people behind you can still see your number plate. If we close the boot back up again, Mark 1 Minis have these different smaller rear lights which look a little bit cuter, and of course bumper overriders which are just fantastic. You may notice a couple of things about this particular Mini which shouldn't be on the car. First of all are these wheels, which are from a Cooper S, so they're a little bit wider than standard 850 Mini wheels. Also these wing mirrors, which aren't original,
the quick release grill, which you release with these, which means you don't have to go around unscrewing all the screws. And finally, these little eyebrows here, which are awesome, and I would have them on my Mini, but I know a few purists will point out that they aren't original, but I love them. This car is just perfect. Inside, the Issigonis genius continues with this enormous shelf here to put all your odds and ends on. Of course, this being an Issigonis car, has an ashtray at the top, two more of which are in the back, because Issigonis was a chain smoker who believed that a radio was not necessary and was a distraction, so there is nowhere to put a radio but 3 ashtrays. Anyway, you have this massive shelf, as I've said, in the middle of which is this central dial, which is your speedometer, complete with odometer in the middle and fuel gauge at the bottom. All very basic. Below that you have a switch panel which has your heat control, turn that round, has your choke on the right hand side, and your lights and your wipers here. Here is your ignition key, and if I take that out you can see the scratches there from 60 years worth of keys dangling down. Below that you have a little tiny heater box. In front of you, this enormous steering wheel, which makes the steering very, very light indeed, with the Morris logo in the middle. This down here, if you're wondering, is a pump for your washer bottle. And in the middle you have your 4-speed manual gearbox, and that's a feature many people will know for a 1959 model year. This isn't, this is a 1960, but this has been retrofitted in the last year or so. But first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and reverse. And that gear throw is exceptionally long, as you can see, but it's quite direct, more direct than the MG Metro that I've just done a video on. It's a really, really nice gear change, which is not what I expected from a Magic Wand gear change Mini. Of course, that gear lever going straight into the back of the gearbox down there. That button on the floor is for your high beam, so when you have your lights on, that's how you do your main beam. You have one stalk on an early Mini, and that's this indicator stalk, which obviously your indicators left and right, and that little green light on the end flashes. This is just an utterly charming little car. Again, as I said, with the heater you get no face level vents or anything like that, just these screen vents here and little vents down there. And in the middle here you have your handbrake, and down here that is your starter button, because the key doesn't start. You have to press the button down here to start the car. The trim in here is outstanding. You have this lovely, almost yellow headlining and these little tiny sun visors with no mirrors in them. They're brilliant. Little tiny things, so simple. And a little tiny central mirror there. Tiny wipers. And your mirrors, which are on the wings, are now proper wing mirrors. They're actually quite a bit better than mirrors being on the side of the door here, because the view is more in line, and so it's easier to see through the wing mirrors than it is through door mirrors that you get on modern cars. Now the trim in here is lovely. You get this lovely rich red coloured carpet, dashboard, and on the seats here and at the front. If I take away these two things here and put them on the awesome enormous shelf, you see these seats are really basic, of course no headrests because 1960, and they just fold forwards like that, so you get in the back. No latches on the bottom of the seats, so if you are in a crash they will just fly forwards. And there's this lovely trimming on the door cards here, but Minis have these enormous door bins that there's just so much room in them. As you can see, there's my papers there, there's just so much room there. And the doors are opened through this string here that you pull, and that opens the door. And the doors open really, really wide, which is dead useful. If I close it again, it does make quite a bit of noise, but it feels very well put together, the car, to be honest. And you get these sliding windows here. No wind-up windows here. Issigonis didn't like them, so he wanted sliding windows, which meant you could have all this room for the door bin here. And yet there's still a lot of room for the legs in here. I mean, you do sit quite close, but the pedals are these little tiny things
they are in a really quite nice position. And the steering wheel is very, very upright. You do feel like you're a bus driver maybe in this car, but you do sit lower than I expected actually. So you feel very much like you're inside the car rather than on top it like I thought you might feel. The horn is here in the middle. Cute little horn. And there isn't that much else to show you on the front, except, I've just thought of, you get 3-point seatbelts in this one. That was either an optional extra or these have been retrofitted, but they aren't inertia real, so you have to adjust them. And here's your buckle down here. But this car is incredibly basic, but it's just so nice. Now it is incredibly basic in this car, as you'd probably expect, but it's really, really nice in here. There's quite a lot of room. There's more than enough shoulder room. There's an awful lot of headroom as you sit very low in the car, as I've said. This car has everything you need and nothing more. It's just a gear stick, a speedo, lights, wipers, a manual choke and nothing else. It's just perfect. And this steering wheel is way too big, even for a car with no power steering, but the thin rim is just so comfortable to use. It's a much nicer steering wheel than many modern cars. Now, despite the fact that this is meant to be basic motoring for the masses, it's really comfortable in here, and there's no equipment, but everything about it is utterly charming. And that's probably me looking at it from 2019 standards, where this car's something that's really special. But I don't see how anybody could look at this car, even in 1960, and think that this wasn't something that was just really nicely trimmed, really nicely designed, and actually, despite BMC's reputation, really nicely put together as well. Well, I'm now sat in the back of the Mini, and there's legroom. There is actual legroom. And headroom. That's amazing. You get so much more room in the back of an original Mini than you do in a modern Mini. And this 1960, if I just angle the camera around a little bit better, there's just so much room in here, and even more behind the passenger because the passenger seat's a little bit further forwards. It's fantastic. Again, no rear seat belts, but you do get little pop-out rear windows, which are fantastic. Again, I'm jealous. I wish I had them on my Metro. And you do get this. Oh, you probably can't see that. Let me turn the camera around. You do get, again, an ashtray, because Alec Issigonis and his chain smoking, and 3 ashtrays being the correct amount for a car with 4 passengers, but oh well. And you get these enormous door pockets. I mean, I've got my notes for this video here, and you can place them in the bin here. They are enormous. This is just the best car in the world. I mean, I love Minis. I adore them. They are my all-time favourite car. But this is just utterly, utterly perfect. Now, there's also this cavity underneath the rear seats. And on some Minis, only the early ones, these were filled by little wicker baskets, which I can't think of something better to suit this car than little wicker baskets to go under there to store even more stuff in. Now, if you're not massively into cars, or you're not into Minis, you might not know this, but the Coopers were really, really exclusive, really special cars that are, especially to this day. The Cooper was introduced in 1961 and ran until 71, and then the Rover versions in the 90s. But the Coopers were really special, and this is a Mini Minor. It's not a Mini Cooper. Of course, the Mini didn't just come as a saloon like this one. Of course, no hatchback because 1959. It also came as a van, a pickup truck and an estate. The estate Austin versions had wood on the side of the estate, which looks awesome. No, sorry, Morris versions. Yeah, Morris estates. Don't quote me on that, Google it. Now, pre-production Minis didn't quite have all this chrome. Obviously, these little eyebrows are put on later, etc. But very early Minis didn't have the bumper overriders, and they didn't have this designed grille here that was different between Morris and Austin Minis. They instead had a slatted metal grille that was part of the front end that had no chrome around here. And that front end was still used on the vans and the pickups all the way up until 1982 when they stopped making them. But BMC executives at the time, just before this car was launched, wanted the car to be jazzed up a little bit. They wanted to make it look a little bit more premium than Issigonis had originally designed it. And I agree with them, to be honest.
as much as this car's now 60 years old, I would agree that the metal slatted grills will make the car look a little bit too agricultural, whereas this kind of grille and the extra chrome makes it a little bit more special.
As ever, I'm not going to drive this car. I can't because of my age and insurance, etc, etc. But it's not as if you're missing out with me not driving this car, because everybody knows exactly how they drive. They're immense. There's no hyperbole that hasn't already been used by journalists describing how the Mini drives. Monte Carlo rallies and touring car championships don't lie. This is a great little car to drive.
It's also one of the very few cars ever to have been launched that has no baggage with it. It's a truly classless car, just as at home on Carnaby Street as it is in the school car park. Now, this is my dream car, and I hope I've managed to show you why this is my dream car in today's video. One day when I get more Minis, later Minis, a Clubman Mini maybe, a Mark IV, a very late Mark VII Mini even, and then I'll be able to document the evolution of the Mini through the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s up to the modern day. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Please like the video, subscribe, comment and share. It really means a hell of a lot to me. Please tell me about your tales of the Mini in the comments because I really love to hear them. And until then, I'll see you in a future video.